The Kathrani Nebula was a place where ships went to die. Massive clouds of purple and red gas stretched across millions of miles, hiding the wreckage of battles long forgotten. Broken hulls floated in the darkness like the bones of giant metal beasts. No one came here unless they had to. It was a graveyard, and graveyards were meant to be left alone. Lieutenant Commander Yara Chen stood at the sensor station of the salvage vessel Pilgrim's Hope, watching the dead ships drift past on her screen. Her job was simple: find valuable wreckage, mark it for recovery, move on. She had done this work for 3 years, and she had learned to ignore the ghosts that seemed to whisper from every broken hole. But today, something was different. A signal appeared on her screen. It was weak, barely visible among the static and interference of the nebula. Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have called it a glitch. But Yara was not most people. She had grown up reading old Earth naval histories, and she recognized the pattern of that signal. It was Morse code. Old Earth Morse code. A communication method that had not been used in over 100 years. Her heart began to beat faster as she decoded the message. 3 letters, repeating over and over. So if someone was calling for help, Captain, she said. Turning to face the older man who commanded the Pilgrim's Hope and picking up a distress signal. Old format. Very old. Captain Reeves barely looked up from his coffee. He was a tired man who had seen too much and cared too little. Probably just echo bounce from old wreckage. These nebulas are full of weird signals. Ignore it, but sir, it is repeating in a pattern. Someone is sending it on purpose. Chen, we are here to salvage metal, not chase ghosts. Drop it. Yara stared at her screen. The signal pulsed again. SOSS. Asa, something deep inside her, refused to let it go. She had joined the salvage corps to find things that were lost. And right now, something lost was calling to her. She made her decision. 3 hours later, while the rest of the crew slept, Yara took a small shuttle and slipped away from the Pilgrim's Hope. She followed the signal deeper into the nebula, navigating through fields of debris that scraped against her hull. The wreckage grew thicker as she flew. Twisted metal, shattered weapons. The remains of a battle that had ended 7 years ago. The Battle of Crimson Reach. Yara remembered it from the news reports. The Vorith Dominion, an ancient alien empire that saw humans as insects, had ambushed a human fleet in this very nebula. Over 30 ships had been destroyed. Thousands of sailors had died. It was humanity's greatest defeat, and the Vorith had celebrated it as proof humans were weak and easy to crush. Among the ships lost that day was the UES Relentless, a dreadnought. The pride of the human fleet? 2,400 crew members had served on that ship. None had survived, or so everyone believed. Yara's shuttle broke through a thick cloud of gas, and suddenly, there it was, the Relentless. Hanging in the darkness, like a sleeping giant. Its hull was scarred and burned. Holes gaped in its armor where weapons had torn through. Entire sections were missing, replaced by strange patches of metal that did not match the original design. But the ship was whole. It was intact. It was impossible. Yara brought her shuttle closer, her hands shaking on the controls. Every sensor told her the ship was dead. No power. No heat. No life signs. Just a cold, empty tomb floating in space. Then the airlock opened. Why? ARA stopped breathing. The airlock had opened from the inside. On a ship with no power, on a ship that had been dead for 7 years, a figure stepped into the doorway. It was a man, thin, almost skeletal. His uniform hung loose on his body, faded and torn. His hair was gray and wild. His face was lined with years of suffering. But his eyes were alive, burning with something that Yara could not name. He raised one hand and gestured for her to come aboard against every instinct that told her to run. Yara docked her shuttle and stepped through the airlock. The air inside the Relentless was cold and stale. Emergency lights flickered in the corridors, casting long shadows on walls covered with writing. Names. Hundreds of names. Thousands of names. Scratched into the metal by hand, The man in the torn uniform stood before her. When he spoke, his voice was rough, like he had not used it in a long time. "Took you long enough," he said. "I am Captain Marcus Vane, and you are standing on the deck of the most stubborn ship in the galaxy." Yara could not find words. Captain Vane was supposed to be dead. The Relentless was supposed to be destroyed. Everything she was seeing was supposed to be impossible. How? She finally managed to ask. "How are you alive?" Vane smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had stared into the darkness for 7 years and refused to blink. "Because we did not have permission to die," he said. "The Vorath left us here to rot. They thought the cold and the silence would finish what their weapons started. They were wrong." He turned and began walking deeper into the ship. Yara followed, unable to stop herself. As they walked, she saw more people. Men and women in ragged uniforms, thin and worn, but standing tall. They watched her pass with eyes that had seen too much. 47 of us survived the battle," Vane continued. 47 out of 2,400. We buried our friends in the void. We wrote their names on the walls so they would not be forgotten. And then we got to work." They reached the bridge. It was a mess of wires and salvaged parts, held together by determination and desperate hope. Screens flickered with weak light. Systems hummed with barely enough power to function. "We rebuilt this ship," Vane said, turning to face her, "piece by piece, year by year, using wreckage from our enemies, using our own blood and sweat. The Vorath think we are dead. The galaxy thinks we are dead." He stepped closer, and Yara saw the fire in his eyes grow brighter. "But we are not dead, and we have unfinished business." He pointed to a screen showing a star map. A red dot moved slowly across it. A convoy. A Vorath convoy. In 3 days, the High Arbiter of the Vorath Dominion will pass through this sector. The same commander who ordered the massacre at Crimson Reach, the same monster who killed our friends and laughed as our ships burned. Captain Vane's voice dropped to a whisper, cold and sharp as a blade. "We have waited 7 years for this moment. 7 years of silence. 7 years of pain. And now, finally, it is time." He looked at Yara with eyes that held no doubt and no fear. "So the question is simple, Lieutenant Commander. Are you going to report back to your ship and tell them you found nothing? Or are you going to join a crew of dead men on a mission that will make the Vorath remember why they should have feared humanity?" Yara looked at the names scratched into the walls. 2,400 souls who had never come home. She thought about the families who had never received answers. She thought about an empire that believed humans were weak. She made her choice. "What do you need me to do, Captain?" Vane smiled again. This time, it almost reached his eyes. "Welcome aboard the Relentless, Lieutenant Commander. We have a war to finish." Yara spent her first hours aboard the Relentless learning how the impossible had become real. Captain Vane walked her through the ship, showing her the scars of 7 years of survival. Every corridor told a story. Every patch of welded metal was a victory against death. "When the battle ended, we had nothing," Vane explained as they walked. "Our engines were dead. Life support was failing. We had maybe 2 days of air left. The Vorath scanned us, saw no power signatures, and left us to die. They did not even bother to finish us off. To them, we were already corpses. They passed a section of the hull that had been repaired with plates of dark gray metal. It looked different from the rest of the ship. Alien. Vorath armor," Vane said, noticing her gaze. "From the ships that died around us, we had no choice. We used what we could find. Human wreckage. Vorath wreckage. Anything that would keep us alive." He stopped at a door and pushed it open. Inside was a workshop filled with tools and parts. A man with no legs sat in a wheeled chair working on a piece of machinery. His dark skin was marked with old burn scars, and his hands moved with the precision of a master craftsman. "This is Chief Engineer Kofi Asante," Vane said. "He lost his legs on the first day. He has kept this ship running every day since." Kofi looked up and gave Yara a tired nod. "Welcome to the madhouse," he said. "Hope you know how to hold a wrench. We do not have passengers here. Yara would soon learn that Kofi was the heart of the relentless. In the early days, when everyone wanted to give up, he had been the one to refuse. He had crawled through burning corridors on his hands, dragging equipment, rewiring systems, refusing to let the ship die. When others wept, he worked. When others lost hope, he built. The first year was the hardest, Kofi told her later, when Vane had moved on. We ate emergency rations until they ran out. Then we learned to recycle everything. Water, air, even waste. Nothing was thrown away. Nothing was wasted. He gestured to the machinery around him. By the second year, we had power. By the third, we had weapons. By the fifth, we started dreaming about something more than survival. Yara met the other survivors one by one. There was Talia Reyes, the weapons officer, a woman with cold eyes and steady hands. She had spent 7 years maintaining guns she was never allowed to fire, because firing them would have revealed to the galaxy that the relentless still lived. Every night I dreamed about pulling the trigger, Talia admitted. Every night I imagined making them pay. But the captain said we had to wait. We had to be patient. So I waited. There was Dmitry Volkov, the navigator, an old man whose eyes had been damaged by radiation. He could barely see, but he knew the nebula better than anyone alive. He had mapped every asteroid, every gas cloud, every piece of wreckage. He could fly blind through this graveyard because he had made it his home. The nebula protects us, Dmitry said. It hides us. The Voroth never look here because they think there is nothing to find. They are wrong. There is us. There was young Sarah Kim, who had been only 19 when the battle happened. She had grown into a woman aboard this ship, trained by the survivors, hardened by years of struggle. She did not remember what normal life felt like. The relentless was the only home she knew. Sometimes I wonder what the sun looks like, Sarah told Yara quietly. Real sunlight, not filtered through screens. I was born on Earth, but I cannot remember the sky. These were the ghosts of the relentless. 47 souls who had refused to die. They had lost so much. Friends, family, their youth, their health. But they had gained something else. A purpose. A reason to keep breathing. Revenge. On her second night aboard, Yara found Captain Vane alone on the observation deck. He stood in front of a large window, staring out at the nebula. The purple and red clouds swirled slowly in the darkness, beautiful and terrible at the same time. You are wondering if we are crazy? Vane said without turning around. You are wondering if this is a suicide mission. Yara did not deny it. The thought has crossed my mind. Vane was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with memories. I had a daughter, he said. Her name was Alina. She was 12 when I left for this mission. I promised her I would come home. I promised her we would go fishing at the lake near our house. She loved that lake. He finally turned to face Yara. In the dim light, she could see the pain in his eyes. Alina is 19 now. She thinks I am dead. She has spent 7 years believing her father is never coming home. Do you know what that does to a child? Yara did not answer. She could not. I am not doing this because I want to die, Vane continued. I am doing this because of what the Vorath believe. They believe humans break. They believe we surrender when the cost is too high. They believe we are weak. He stepped closer, and his voice grew harder. At Crimson Reach, they killed 2,400 of my people, and then they laughed. They sent messages across the galaxy, celebrating their victory. They called us insects. They said we were not worth the ammunition it took to kill us. His hands clenched into fists. I have waited 7 years to prove them wrong. 7 years to show them that humans do not break. We do not surrender. We do not give up, even when we are beaten. Even when we are forgotten. Even when the whole universe thinks we are dead. He looked back out at the nebula. At the wreckage floating in the darkness, the High Arbiter who commanded the attack at Crimson Reach is named Thiessen Crix. He is the one who gave the order to leave us here to rot. In 3 days, his convoy will pass through this sector. 3 destroyers. 1 diplomatic vessel, heading to a peace conference where they will demand more human territory. Vane's voice dropped to a whisper. He will never reach that conference. Yara understood now. This was not about survival. This was not even about revenge. Not really. This was about sending a message. A message written in fire and blood. A message that would echo across the stars. Humans do not die quietly. Humans do not fade away. When you push humanity into a corner, when you think you have one, when you turn your back and walk away, that is when humanity is most dangerous. The ship is not ready, Yara said quietly. You know that. The systems are unstable. The crew is exhausted. You are outnumbered and outgunned. They nodded slowly. Yes, we are. Then why do you think you can win? The captain smiled. It was the smile of a man who had already made peace with death and found something beyond it. Because winning is not the point, he said. The point is showing up. The point is fighting when everyone says you should not. The point is making them remember that they should never have left us alive. He placed a hand on Yara's shoulder. In 3 days, the Relentless will fly into battle for the last time. We will probably die. But before we die, we will make sure the galaxy never forgets us. We will make sure the Vorath never sleep peacefully again. Yara looked into his eyes and saw no madness there. Only certainty. Only purpose. I need to send a message to my ship, she said. I need to tell them I found nothing. Vane nodded. Welcome to the crew, Lieutenant Commander. Somewhere deep in the ship, an engine coughed to life for the first time in years. The Relentless was waking up, and it was hungry. The next 72 hours were the longest of Yara's life. She had never worked so hard. She had never been so tired. And she had never felt so alive. The Relentless needed everything. Power systems that had been running on hope and prayers needed to be stabilized. Weapons that had not been fired in 7 years needed to be tested. Hybrid technology that mixed human and Vorath. Engineering needed to be tuned until it worked together instead of fighting itself. Yara threw herself into the work. Her experience as a salvage officer made her valuable in ways she had not expected. She knew how alien technology failed. She knew how to make broken things work again. She knew how to see solutions that others missed. Move the power coupling 3 inches to the left, she told Kofi on the first day. Pointing at a junction box that sparked and smoked, the Vorath systems run hotter than ours. You need more space for heat to escape. Kofi stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a deep sound that echoed through the engineering bay. 3 years, he said. 3 years I have been fighting that junction. And you walk in here and fix it in 3 minutes? Fresh eyes, Yara said with a small smile. Sometimes that is all it takes. She worked with Talia on the weapon systems. The main guns of the Relentless had been fused with Vorath technology, creating something new and strange. The weapons were powerful, but they were also unpredictable. They fired in patterns that no tactical computer could anticipate, because no one had ever seen weapons like them before. This is either brilliant or insane, Talia muttered as they ran tests. Maybe both. As long as it kills Vorath. I do not care which, Yara replied. She helped Dimitri plot the intercept course. The convoy would pass through a region filled with asteroids and debris. If the Relentless could hide among the rocks, they could get close before being detected. It was dangerous. One wrong move, and they would crash into a mountain of stone. But Dimitri knew these rocks like he knew his own hands. I have been waiting for this, the old navigator said, his damaged eyes staring at charts he could barely see. All these years, mapping every stone, every shadow, I always knew it would matter someday. I always knew we would need a path. Even young Sarah helped, running messages between departments, carrying tools, doing whatever was needed. She worked without complaint, without rest, pushing herself as hard as anyone else. Are you afraid? Yara asked her, during a brief moment of rest. Sarah thought about the question. I have been afraid for 7 years, she said. I am tired of being afraid. At least now, I am afraid of something I can fight. The crew of the Relentless worked like people possessed. They did not sleep. They barely ate. They pushed their broken bodies to the limit and then pushed further. because they knew this was their only chance. 7 years of waiting had led to this moment. They would not waste it. But not everything went smoothly. On the second day, a power surge knocked out the shields. For 6 hours, the crew scrambled to repair the damage, knowing that without shields, the Relentless would not survive the first minute of combat. Kofi worked until his hands bled, rerouting power through backup systems that barely existed. "Come on," he whispered to the ship, as if it could hear him. "Come on, old girl. Do not give up now. Not now. Not when we are so close." The shields came back online just before midnight. Weak, unstable, but functional. It would have to be enough. On the third day, 2 crew members collapsed from exhaustion. They were carried to the medical bay, where the ship's doctor, a woman named Helen Park, worked to keep them stable. She had been a surgeon before the battle. Now she was the only medical professional left, caring for 47 patients with supplies meant for a dozen. "They will be okay," she told Captain Vane. "But they cannot fight. They need rest." Vane nodded grimly. To fewer guns. To fewer hands. They were already so few. That night, the final night, Yara found herself sitting in the mess hall with a group of survivors. They shared stories. They talked about home. They talked about the people they had lost and the people they had left behind. An older man named Thomas Chen, no relation to Yara, spoke about his wife. She had been pregnant when he left for his mission. He had never met his son. He would be 7 now, Thomas said quietly. "Same age as this mission. I wonder what he looks like. I wonder if he has my eyes." A woman named Grace spoke about her mother. She had been sick before the battle. Grace did not know if she was still alive. "I dream about her sometimes," Grace said. "In my dreams, she is always healthy. She is always smiling. I hold on to those dreams. They keep me going." Yara listened to these stories and felt something shift inside her. These were not just soldiers. These were not just survivors. These were people who had given up everything for a chance that might never come. They had sacrificed years of their lives, waiting in the darkness, hoping for a moment exactly like this. She thought about her own life. Her small apartment on a space station. Her job that felt meaningless. Her days that blurred together into nothing. She had been existing, but she had not been living. Not really here, on this broken ship full of broken people. She had found something real, purpose, connection, a reason to fight. Captain Vane entered the mess hall, and the conversations, all silent. He looked at his crew, at the men and women who had followed him through 7 years of hell, and his eyes shone with pride. "Tomorrow, we fly into battle," he said. "Tomorrow, we face an enemy that thinks we are already dead. They are wrong." He paused, letting the words settle. "I will not lie to you. Our chances are not good. We are 1 ship against 3 destroyers and whatever else they throw at us. Many of us will not survive. Perhaps none of us will." No one spoke. No one looked away. "But I want you to know something. Whatever happens tomorrow, we have already won. We survived when they said we could not. We rebuilt when they said it was impossible. We stood up when they thought we would stay down." His voice grew stronger, filling the room. "Tomorrow, we show the Voroth what humans are made of. Tomorrow, we send a message that will echo across the stars. Tomorrow, we prove that humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not break. Humanity fights until the last breath, the last bullet, the last heartbeat." He raised his hand in a salute. "It has been my honor to serve with you. All of you. Now get some rest. Tomorrow, we finish what they started." The crew saluted back. Some had tears in their eyes. Some were smiling. All of them were ready. That night, Yara could not sleep. She walked through the corridors of the Relentless, running her hands along the walls covered with names. 2,400 names. 2,400 souls who would ride with them into battle. She stopped at a viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Voroth convoy was moving closer. Somewhere out there, the enemy was sleeping peacefully, unaware of what was coming. At dawn, the engines of the Relentless roared to life. The ship that had been dead for 7 years began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. Then faster still, the ghost was awake, and it was coming for blood. The Relentless emerged from the asteroid, felt like a ghost rising from its grave. One moment there was nothing but rock and shadow. The next moment, a warship that had been dead for 7 years appeared in the heart of the Vorath convoy. On the bridge, Captain Vane watched the enemy ships on his screen. 3 destroyers surrounded a large diplomatic vessel. The destroyers were sleek and deadly, built for war. Each one was newer, faster, and stronger than the Relentless. Together, they had enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. But for one critical moment, none of them moved. Yara understood why. The Vorath sensors were telling them something impossible. They were seeing a ship that their records said was destroyed. A ship that should have been dust and bones. A ship that simply could not exist. They are confused, Dmitri reported from his navigation station. Their tactical systems do not know how to respond. They think their sensors are broken. Good, Vane said calmly. Let them think. Fire main guns. All targets. Talia pulled the trigger with a smile that had waited 7 years to bloom. The hybrid weapons of the Relentless screamed to life. Energy beams mixed with projectile rounds tore across the void, striking the nearest destroyer before its shields could activate. The enemy ship shuddered under the impact. Explosions rippled across its hull. Secondary blasts erupted from within as power systems overloaded. First blood to the ghosts. Destroyer 1 is crippled, Sarah reported from her station. They are losing power. Keep firing, Vane ordered. Do not give them time to recover. The Relentless pressed its attack, pouring fire into the wounded destroyer. The Vorath ship tried to return fire, but its weapons were sluggish, its crew still reeling from the shock of seeing their nightmare come to life. Within minutes, the destroyer broke apart, torn to pieces by weapons that should not exist. But the other destroyers were waking up now. The second destroyer, a ship called the Burning Sky, turned to face the Relentless. Its captain had recovered from the initial shock and was barking orders. Shields went up, weapons charged. The Burning Sky was ready to fight. Incoming fire, Kofi warned from engineering. Brace for impact. The Vorath weapons hit the Relentless like a hammer striking an anvil. The old ship groaned and shook. Alarms screamed throughout the corridors. Damage reports flooded in from every section. Shields holding, Kofi reported, though his voice was strained. Barely. We cannot take many more hits like that. Then we do not let them hit us, Vane replied. Dmitri, evasive pattern. Keep us moving. The Relentless began to dance. Dmitri's hands flew across his controls, guiding the ship through maneuvers that should have been impossible for a vessel its size. He knew the debris field around them like he knew his own heartbeat. He used every rock, every piece of wreckage, every shadow to shield them from enemy fire. The Burning Sky struggled to track them. Its targeting systems had been designed to fight normal ships, ships that followed predictable patterns. The Relentless was not a normal ship. It was a hybrid monster, moving in ways that no tactical computer could anticipate. Talia exploited every opening. Her weapons struck the Burning Sky again and again, chipping away at its shields, punching holes in its armor. The Vorath ship fought back fiercely, but the damage was mounting.
Ow.
Their shields are failing, Sarah called out. One more good hit, and we have them. Do it, Vane commanded. Talia fired everything. The Relentless poured its fury into the Burning Sky. The enemy destroyer exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the void like a small sun. 2 down. 1 to go. But the third destroyer was different. The Vorath's Claw was the flagship of the convoy, commanded by High Arbiter Thiessen Crix himself. It was larger than the others, better armed, better protected. And Crix was no fool. He had watched his 2 escorts die, and he had learned from their mistakes. The Claw is moving to engage, Dmitri reported. He is keeping his distance, using long-range weapons. He knows we are better in close combat. Clever, Vane muttered. Too clever. The Claw's weapons began to rain down on the Relentless from a distance. Each hit was precise, calculated to cause maximum damage while keeping the Vorath ship safely out of reach. Shields failed. Hull plates buckled. Fires broke out in multiple sections. "We are losing power," Kofi shouted. "The hybrid systems are overloading. I cannot keep this up much longer." Crew members began to fall. Thomas Chen took a piece of shrapnel to the chest while sealing a breach. He died with a smile on his face, whispering his son's name. Grace was killed when a power conduit exploded next to her station. She never saw it coming. Yara felt each death like a knife in her heart. These people had become her friends in just 3 days. Now they were dying around her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "Captain," she said, her voice raw, "we cannot win this fight. Not like this." Vane was silent for a long moment. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. His uniform was torn. His ship was dying around him. But his eyes were calm. "You're right," he said quietly. "We cannot win this fight. Not with weapons. Not with shields. Not with anything we have left." He stood up from his command chair and walked to the center of the bridge. "Kofi, divert all remaining power to engines. Everything. Weapons. Shields. Life support. Everything." The chief engineer's voice crackled over the communicator. "Captain, if I do that, we will have nothing left. No protection. No weapons. Nothing." "I know," Vane replied. "Do it anyway." The lights on the bridge dimmed as power was drained from every system. The Relentless went dark, silent, dead, but its engines burned brighter than ever before. "Dimitri, plot a collision course with the Claw. Maximum speed." The old navigator did not hesitate. "Course plotted, Captain." Yara understood what was happening. A suicide run. Vane was going to ram the enemy flagship, using the mass of the Relentless as a weapon. It was desperate. It was insane. It was their only chance. The Relentless surged forward, accelerating toward the Claw at impossible speed. On the Vorath ship, alarms must have been screaming. They saw a dead ship hurtling toward them, and they had only seconds to respond. Crix ordered his gunners to fire everything. Weapons hammered the Relentless, tearing away armor, blasting holes in the hull. But the ship kept coming. Nothing could stop it now, at the last moment. Vane gave one final order, rolled the ship. Now, the Relentless twisted in space, exposing its damaged underside to the Claw. And there, hidden in the wreckage of the lower hull, was something the Vorath had never detected. A weapon salvaged from a destroyed Vorath dreadnought. The same type of weapon that had killed 2,000 humans at Crimson Reach. "Fire," Vane whispered. The weapon erupted. A beam of pure destruction tore across the void and struck the Claw at point-blank range. The Vorath flagship, the pride of High Arbiter Crix, the butcher of Crimson Reach, vanished in an explosion that outshone the stars. For a moment, there was only light. Then there was only silence. The Relentless drifted through the debris, powerless, broken, barely holding together. On the bridge, the survivors slowly picked themselves up. Yara looked around at the damage, at the bodies, at the flickering screens. "We did it," she breathed. "We actually did it." Captain Vane slumped in his chair, a weak smile on his bloody face. "Yes," he said. "We did." Then the lights went out, and the Relentless went dark. Silent, still, dead. Again, or so it seemed, the Relentless floated in the wreckage of the Vorath convoy. A broken ship surrounded by the remains of its enemies. No power. No life support. No hope. Just 17 survivors huddled on a dying bridge, breathing air that grew colder and thinner with every passing minute. Yara sat with her back against a console, watching her breath form small clouds in front of her face. Around her, the other survivors waited in silence. Some were wounded. Some were praying. All of them were ready for the end. Captain Vane lay on the deck nearby, too injured to stand. The battle had taken everything from him. Blood soaked through the bandages wrapped around his chest. His face was pale as paper, but his eyes were still open, still watching, still refusing to close. How long? He asked weakly. Kofi checked a small device in his hand. It was the only thing still working on the ship. Maybe 2 hours of air left. Maybe less. Vane nodded slowly. Enough time? Enough time for what? Yara asked. The captain smiled. To watch the stars. I have not really looked at them in 7 years. Always too busy fighting. Too busy surviving. Now, I can finally just look. Yara followed his gaze to the viewport. The nebula stretched out before them, clouds of purple and red swirling in the eternal darkness. It was beautiful. Terrifying and beautiful. Do you think anyone will find us? Young Sarah asked. Her voice was small, like a child's. Someone will, Dimitri said. He could barely see anymore, but his voice was steady. The Vorath will send ships to investigate when their convoy does not arrive. They will find their precious High Arbiter floating in pieces among the stars. They will find us. And then, the old navigator smiled grimly. And then they will know what we did. They will tell stories about us. The ghost ship that came back from the dead. The humans who refused to die. Minutes passed. The air grew thinner. The cold crept deeper into their bones. One by one, the survivors began to drift into unconsciousness. It was easier that way. Less painful, Yara fought to stay awake. She wanted to see the end. She wanted to remember every moment. Then she saw something that made her heart stop. A light. Moving through the debris field. Then another light. And another. Ships. Human ships. Captain, she whispered. Captain, look. Vane forced his eyes to focus on the viewport. What he saw brought tears to his face for the first time in 7 years. A fleet of human warships emerged from the nebula. Their hulls gleaming with power, their weapons ready, their flags flying proud. At the head of the fleet was a carrier bearing the insignia of the Border Defense Command. Relentless. This is Admiral Helena Cross of the carrier Indomitable. Please respond. Yara scrambled to the communication console. It was dead, like everything else. But she found an emergency beacon, a simple device that needed no power. She activated it, sending a single pulse out into the void. I am here. We are here. Please help us. The response was immediate. Shuttles launched from the carrier, racing toward the Relentless. Medical teams. Rescue crews. People who had come to save them. Yara laughed. She could not help it. After everything they had been through, after all the death and pain and sacrifice, someone had come. Someone had found them. How? She asked as the first shuttle docked with their broken ship. How did you know? Admiral Cross was the first to board the Relentless. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen 100 battles. She looked at the survivors, at the damage, at the names scratched into the walls, and her composure nearly broke. I recognized the signal, she said quietly. Old Earth Morse code. Captain Vane and I served together 20 years ago. He taught me that code. When I detected it coming from this nebula, I knew. I knew it had to be him. She knelt beside the wounded captain, taking his hand in hers. You stubborn old fool, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I knew you were too mean to die. Vane laughed weakly. It turned into a cough. Helena, you got old. So did you. What did you do here, Marcus? What did you do? Vane's eyes drifted to the viewport, to the debris of the Vorath fleet floating in the darkness. Unfinished business, he whispered. Finally finished. The survivors were evacuated from the Relentless and brought aboard the Indomitable. Doctors worked frantically to save those who could be saved. 17 people had survived the final battle. 17 out of 47. 47 out of 2,400. The news spread across human space like fire. The Relentless, the ship that had been destroyed 7 years ago, the ship that everyone thought was dead, it had come back. It had attacked a Vorath convoy. It had killed the High Arbiter himself. The galaxy went mad. On human worlds, people poured into the streets to celebrate. The story of the Relentless became a legend overnight. The ghost ship, the dead men who refused to die, The 47, who held on for 7 years, waiting for their moment of revenge. On Vorith worlds, there was only fear. The humans they had dismissed as insects had done the impossible. They had turned their own weapons against them. They had killed one of their greatest leaders. And they had done it with a ship that was supposed to be dead. The Vorith Dominion made a terrible mistake. They demanded that humanity hand over the survivors of the Relentless as war criminals. They threatened consequences if their demands were not met. Humanity's answer was simple: no. For the first time in the Long War, humanity did not just defend. It pushed back. Colonies that had stayed neutral now joined the fight. Fleets that had been hiding now advanced. The tide of the war began to turn, inspired by the courage of a crew who had refused to surrender. Captain Marcus Vane did not live to see it. His wounds were too severe. The years of hardship had taken too much from his body. He died 3 weeks after the battle, in a hospital on Earth, surrounded by his crew. His daughter Elena was there at the end, holding his hand, finally reunited with the father she thought she had lost. "I am sorry," he told her with his last breath. "I am sorry I could not come home sooner." Elena wept. But she also smiled. "You came home, Dad. That is all that matters." The Relentless was not forgotten. The ship was recovered from the nebula and brought back to Earth. Engineers studied its hybrid systems. Scientists marveled at the ingenuity of its repairs. And then slowly, carefully, they rebuilt it. The new Relentless was stronger than the original, faster, more powerful. It carried the best technology humanity could create. Fused with the lessons learned from 7 years of desperate survival, and on its hull, etched in letters that could be seen from space, were the names of every soul lost at Crimson Reach. 2,400 names that would never be forgotten. Yar Chen stood on the bridge of the rebuilt ship as it prepared for its first mission. She was its new captain now, promoted for her role in the battle, chosen to carry on the legacy of the ghosts. In the ready room, a plaque hung on the wall. It bore the words she had suggested, words that had become humanity's rallying cry. They called us dead. They were wrong. Yara looked out at the stars and remembered the man who had refused to die. The crew who had held on through 7 years of darkness, the ship that had become a symbol of everything humanity could be. "All stations report ready," she commanded. One by one, her crew responded. They were new faces, but they carried the spirit of those who came before. "Set course for the front lines," Captain Yara Chen ordered. "The Relentless has work to do." The engines roared to life. The ship surged forward into the unknown, and somewhere, the vast darkness between the stars, the ghosts of Crimson Reach smiled. Their legacy would never die.